The Egoist destroyer Itoshi Rin is easily one of the best players in Blue Lock, and today I want to examine why that is the case, what in his bag makes him that good, or gives him the title the strongest striker in Blue Lock. Before even diving into the specifics about Rin, it's important to discuss the general statements made about his individual skill. Dating as far back as the second selection, Rin is portrayed as this unstoppable force that requires Isagi to update the way he views the field to even meet Rin's vision or perceive the field in the same way. Nagi notes it best, as the difference between Isagi and Rin during their rematch wasn't the way they were perceiving the field, but their respective physical attributes such as height, physique, speed, and jumping ability, with Isagi falling short in every category. Furthermore, this is exemplified as Rin is described as having shooting, dribbling, situational judgment, and an eye for tactics. In short, a monster who can create 9 infinite possibilities in his arsenal without the need of chemical reactions. This is to say, everything in his arsenal makes it so that he doesn't need to rely on other players to score goals. Furthermore, if you want a more roundabout way of looking at Rin's individual skills or him as a player overall at this point in time, in the last chapter of episode Nagi, we see right before the third selection, the top 6 are all practicing together, and Nagi is practicing against the phantoms of the top 6, that being Otoya, Karasu, Yukimiya, Baro, and even Isagi. All players he's either played before or has recent experiences with, as for example he knows about Yukimiya's speed at least at this point in time from training with him. We don't see Rin's phantom here however, which may indicate that he's so much farther above Nagi that he can't even visualize a phantom to fight against in training. It's kind of a weird scene since you would say, okay, maybe these are just the players that Nagi played against since he played against Karasu and Otoya and Baro, but he hadn't played against Yukimiya at this point in time or even played with him, just trained with him in the training field. Read into it if you want or don't, doesn't really matter. I just figured it was worth mentioning. In terms of these grandiose statements, there's not really too much to discuss for the U20 game, at least for this section, but this does segue us into the Neoegoist League. In his match against Manshine City, on top of pulling off a hat trick, Nagi directly notes his core, trapping, dribbling, shooting, all of his specs are past the maximum, which isn't really as clear via the official translation. However, other translations just note Rin has evolved beyond comprehension. This is further validified by the chapter statement, which directly notes an evolved Rin single-handedly destroyed Manshine City. Furthermore, in the match against Bastard Munchin, Ness regards Rin as having touch, speed, technique, reading, everything. This is Blue Lock's #1 Itoshi Rin, with Kaiser following this sentiment by saying, in terms of individual skill, Rin is clearly the most exceptional in Blue Lock. Although in all fairness, Kaiser only makes the statement about Rin after he witnesses flow state Rin, at least for a short period of time. So on top of Rin just having these statements about everything in his arsenal being top notch, this is continuously reinforced as he progresses throughout the series, and even as other characters also progress, the gap doesn't seem to close, or he consistently remains the #1 on a macro basis. One of the biggest attributes to Rin as a player and what makes him just an all-rounder is his high level of spatial awareness, which is where a player just begins to analyze not just themselves or their teammates, but the entire field. And with these deductions, it allows you to gain an understanding or predict the future flow of the game. Rin becomes kind of the model that Isagi bases his own spatial awareness on or uses to improve his, whereas Rin, especially in the second match, is just noted to manipulate everybody on the field, testing the limits of all those on the field and drawing out their abilities to new heights, all to make them dance to the tune of his will. Everyone in the game are just Itoshi Rin's marionettes, friend and foe alike. This becomes especially prevalent when Rin does become serious, as he switches off from just using his own abilities to score to now using his opponents and allies to manipulate the entire field. So in both situations, spatial awareness is being used, but Rin goes from playing by himself and using spatial awareness to using the entire field almost effortlessly, only being unable to predict players like Baro with his villainous playstyle being out of control or an irregularity, similarly to Bachira's evolution, or how he believes he no longer needs somebody else to play soccer with, which Isagi was the only one to really believe in. This whole spatial awareness combo being essentially what Isagi vs Rin was all about. It's kind of a chess game, seeing who could acclimate to the changes on the field the fastest in order to win the game. Something that remains true with Isagi even later into the NEL, whereas Rin kind of takes a different route. During the U20 match, there isn't too much to know. We do see that Rin is able to visualize the same grid-like structure that all Metavision users eventually evolved and achieved. However, we haven't seen a genius really use Metavision yet. It's just been talented learners, so we kind of have to wait and see if this will actually turn into Metavision. There also is a layer to this to where a lot of Rin's plays, while good in the U20 game, did come from having prior knowledge to Sei's plays, such as Sei's philosophy or his soccer style being rooted in beautiful destruction, with him finding the most beautiful spot that Sei would like to destroy Blue Lock. With that being said, not all of Rin's plays come from having prior intel on Sei, as we actually see him blocking Sei's pass to Sendel, which actually forces Sei to shoot the loose ball into the goal, which is blocked by Ryu, which leads to halftime. The main difference between Isagi and Rin is that Isagi almost doubles down on how he views the field, whereas Rin kind of specs into other avenues while still having this high level of spatial awareness. Rin's own spatial awareness and instincts, while not being to the exact caliber of Isagi or maybe Kaiser's Metavision, usually lead him to those points anyway, to the point that he can actually compete or read the field to some extent the same as these Metavision users. I think this is emphasized more with some of Rin's latent abilities that we're going to talk about, and this especially being shown more recently with the Nigeria match, where he really just needs to spec into other areas and double down on something that doesn't really suit him as a player, as he's a genius and doesn't really function as much as a talented learner in terms of logical coordination. I'll talk about where I think Rin is going in a bit, but next up I want to talk about his shooting. Rin's shooting has always been particularly a strong suit of his, even among his other stats. This taking the form of his curve shots, which have always been just ridiculously impressive. Whether it's him shooting from the center line and scoring on the kickoff, something even Baro has been showcased to struggle to perform, as he fails to do so in his match against Isagi and Nagi, or Rin scoring a goal off the corner via a vertical spin direct shot that was so high Isagi thought he was passing to Ryu. His curve shot's always been that impressive. I don't want to sit here and outline every goal, but we actually do see in the U20 game, Rin almost makes the same shot that Sei did by shooting with his non-dominant foot directly to the right of the goal area, only failing due to the U20 goalie grazing the ball with his finger. We do see when Rin does score, however, Aiku pretty much sets him up in a lose-lose situation of sorts. He pretty much leaves Rin's left leg open, or the shot course a lot more free, as Rin's left shot or left leg is noted to have second-rate power and precision, at least compared to his first. Aiku more so focusing on his right leg in the shot course, forcing Rin to actually shoot to the opposite side of Aiku's prediction. He still shoots with his right leg, but it goes to the left side instead of the right. Rin's shooting arsenal only gets leveled up further in the Neoegoist League, as Isagi directly notes this after seeing Rin score a side spin middle shot while 3 defenders were blocking his shot course to the goal, this being in reference to base Rin, with the obvious in his crazy shot against Bastard München, where he scored a crash shot over 8 players and the goalie, 5 of which being from the opposing team, 6 if you count the goalie, going for the cluster on the right, aka the actively harder route, over the left that was completely open. Rin's collision shot means that if you're attempting to maybe press or disrupt the shot, it could backfire, as Rin will just collide with you while you're shooting. It should be pretty clear that Rin's shooting is at the top of Blue Lock even by the end of the Neoegoist League, as he's just given it constant focus. So he was already ahead in terms of shooting, but has just doubled down on it to the point he's just monstrous. And this actually plays into Rin's ocular ability in the form of his predator vision. And I'm going to talk about how this relates to his shooting in a second, but we actually caught glimpses of this during the 3rd selection, where Rin momentarily capitalized on the goalie's blind view of him to score a goal. We don't see this fruit ripen fully until Bastard München vs PXG, where Rin is forced to mutate against BM in order to stop Isagi and Kaiser's unstoppable coordination. This is to say, if you are actually able to stop Rin with the assistance of another player, Rin can actually break that coordination entirely or capitalize on the moment you are trying to connect. In the PXG game, Rin exploits this to put Isagi in a 4-meter prison where he's able to stop him reflexively in that radius. There can be different kinds of predator vision. There can be predator vision for utilizing the goalie's blind spot. We have the variation that Rin is using, or you have the variation that Kaiser uses and Yukimiya, where they're able to find shot courses to the goalie even through the tightest spaces. I actually think Rin garnered this ability in the lead up to the U20 World Cup, whether in his training before he gets to Blue Lock or in his training with Ego afterwards. We actually see in the match against Nigeria that Rin has an updated way he utilizes Predator Vision. When he's faced up against Aboa Bana, we see him use Predator Vision while firing his infamous curve shot to the corner of the goal, which required Anazi, who is definitely the craziest player we've seen on the team so far, and the team's ace, especially if you look at the flashbacks surrounding Nigeria, to block the shot. This is to say, I think Rin is utilizing the variation of Predator Vision that allows for players like Kaiser to find the best shot course, even through the tightest of defense. This being the first time we see Rin shoot while actually utilizing the ability. The fact that Rin also has amazing dribbling pretty much means even as early as the midfield, he's going to be very dominant as a player, and Rin's dribbling has always been very impressive, whether in his early showings, like in his first match against Isagi, where he completely blows past players like Batra, or how he incorporates body feints into his dribble play, like in his second match against Isagi and co, tied into his high-level field IQ, and it becomes lethal. We see in the match against Bastard Munchen, Rin showcases his dribbling via his occlusion break, sweeping past Kunigami, Raichi, and Ness, which is where Ness begins praising him like we mentioned earlier. And not to overblow it, but Rin performing these feats against the strongest version of the Bastard Munchen team is extremely impressive, especially when you consider that Ness is giving him high respect or glazing his abilities, when Ness has actually been exposed to people like Reo, who were able to replicate or show a copy of, say, Itoshi's nutmeg that he performed on Rin. So he's definitely in the conversation with those top dribblers in the NEL, Yukimiya, Chigiri. Not to the Batra level or that extent, but, you know, he's definitely in the top 5 in my opinion. This isn't the only good showing in this game, as his flow state takes this to the next level. In his flow state, all of his physicals are focused, raising him into his peak performance, where we see him have multiple great dribbling showings, such as when he dribbles past Corona, Hiyori, and Raichi, who Rin regards as too slow, or Rin's dribble past Igaguri, Raichi, and another defender with noted explosive dribbling technique. Again, this remaining true even now, as we see in the latest chapter, or chapter 313, that Rin is able to dribble past 2 Nigerian defenders, so even on the world stage, Rin's dribbling remains top class. So pretty much in terms of Rin's individual skills, he's always either at the top level or just very close to the top. Combining that with his high soccer IQ, all of the techniques I listed before, Predator Vision, the new way he's using it, it's pretty easy to see why Rin is just always at the top. He's just pretty much always got the best set of abilities, or is stat specking in a way that makes it so he's never really falling behind. Even if other players are catching up or surpassing him in a singular category, Rin again is just in a jack of all trades kind of position. The reason Rin specifically, however, even as a character outside just soccer as a game, excels in that kind of 1v1 position is rooted in his ego style, as Rin as an individual is a self-style restrictive player, which is to say the more restrictions that are placed on him in a match, the better he's going to perform or be able to tap into that peak performance / flow state. It just so happened that the 2 individuals who were the door to that flow state happened to be Sei during the U20 game, since Rin was giving his all to crush Sei, his strongest opponent, and Isagi in the match against Bastard Munchen, who was the other egoist that Rin wanted to destroy. The key to entering this flow state is the desire to bring out the best in his opponent and crush it, while risking his own life destroying somebody incredible. With Rin believing that if he can access this state at will, that is the key to defeating Itoshi Sei. The only drawback being that it requires somebody that Rin deems incredible for him to destroy, and considering that Isagi and Sei are going to play with Rin on the U20 team, it's kind of difficult to see who's actually going to force him into that state. It's just one of those things that we got to kind of wait and see. Furthermore, to kind of top it off, this actually is kind of the tip of the iceberg for Rin, as Isagi directly notes that Rin had just started to realize his own talent, as he had the same feeling that Isagi had way back at the beginning of Blue Lock when he crushed Nico's team. That incredible feeling that both Isagi and Rin reached, just at very different stages in their soccer careers. In terms of performance, I don't need to overstate the ending of the PXG game, with it requiring both Isagi and Kaiser with their logical coordination to take on the likes of Rin in his flow state. This is done in the form of new designs that Isagi and Kaiser are constantly creating to overcome the barrier that are the geniuses in their crazy soccer that can't really be understood, but in the same sense the geniuses can't understand the logic that is coming from their plays. The only note that I would make for Rin, or discussing Rin in his flow state, is that he can be almost too instinctual at some times, which Isagi was actually able to exploit in their game, as Rin was just so focused on colliding with him. Same thing for Igarashi, who was forcing fouls from Rin. So this type of trance is not without its drawbacks. However, I will note that Rin can just calm down and adapt to these changes, like when he decides not to run into Igarashi again, or when he begins using his head to not just continuously collide into Isagi. You know, he's not limited to this. It just has shown to be a factor. So this may be a weakness that Rin has to overcome, but when looking at Rin's progression, it makes sense that he's mainly improving all of his techniques, as they all get heightened in his flow state anyway, but him him actually progressing as a shooter with him colliding into the opponent really just makes it so most people are not really going to be able to stop him. There's just too much in his bag at this point. I think there is going to be a change with Rin in his flow state in order to become that incalculable egoist that Sei is looking for. I was assuming that Sei is a talented learner like Isagi. Isagi still was able to predict Rin's movements, which forced Rin to mutate even further. So there's obviously a lot to speculate with the future of Rin, but looking at his current set of abilities or everything he showcases, he's just kind of the 1v1 guy currently in Blue Lock. He's the most set up for that, and his flow state almost doubles down on it. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want more Blue Lock content, definitely consider subscribing. I enjoyed it. I love talking about Rin. I like Rin for the same reason I like Hydreigon. It's just they're cool, they're edgy, they're fun. Catch you next time. Bye bye.